edition of Nerdy in Many Ways for Nerds of the Round Table. I'm joined by Ben and Whitney Spencer. It's great to have you guys. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. We're excited.
Yeah, it's been a fun day. And today is a special topic. We're going to talk about Marvel versus DC. Now, we're not necessarily going to have like a big old debate because we could probably all swing our dukes a couple times about those things. But we're just going to like talk about the goods and the bads of both companies in comics, movies, and video games. And so basically, as far as comics are concerned, let's just kind of weigh Marvel and DC here for a second, because of course each company kind of has their own little niche, right? Mm-hmm. DC is kind of known for more dark, whereas Marvel's kind of more like family friendly and fun. I guess kind of kick it off. What are your guys' thoughts on? We'll start with Marvel Comics.
So, I mean, my lack of comics is not as high as it should be, being the nerd I claim to be, but. No, it's true, and that even reflects to the movies as well, obviously. Right. But like, yes, there are the dark things. Like I know Captain America has some dark stuff that is
absolutely does.
That is in the comics. I think Iron Man has some stuff as well. Of course, all the other people that are in the Marvel universe, because that is massive.
Right. And you can see that come through the movies as well. Some dark parts of it, again, it's rare, but it does
exactly.
happen.
When even the new Doctor Strange coming out in 2021, I believe it is, it's supposed to be not just like a scary movie, but like pretty dark as well.
Yeah.
Don't forget about Black Widow too in the Avengers movie, talking about her life, how she started up and everything. I mean, she definitely didn't have a great start to her life.
Right.
And I really want more background to Hawkeye as well in those movies, if I'm honest. Budapest, what?
Yes. Budapest. We just need a movie called Marvel's Budapest. You know how many views that would probably get more people coming out to the theater than Endgame. Which is saying something. But no, I totally agree with that. Yeah, again, Marvel's got mostly a lot of bright things. You mentioned the dark stuff with Tony Stark and Captain America, like for example, alcoholism with Iron Man. There's multiple issues battling with that, which of course is a lot of like propaganda for like don't drink, kids, and also like other drug awareness things that comic books did back in the day. And then kind of switch things over to DC Comics again. I mentioned how it's mostly a lot of dark vibes for it, but that's mostly just because of one specific character, Batman. Like he's the epitome of dark, and I mean, DC does have its bright moments too, but that darkness does bleed into other characters like Green Arrow, Superman, a lot more than people even realize. And yeah, it just kind of carries on all the way through these different characters.
And again, like Marvel, that's been reflected in the movies and TV shows. Arrow is a pretty dark show with, you know, we know that Oliver has a pretty sketchy past as reflected in the show. So obviously bleeding off of the comics and how dark that character can be.
Right, absolutely.
I mean, he does slightly improve, but you see, like the first season, I mean, I won't lie, most of him is just killing a lot of people and then going home with different girls.
Yes, that's very, very true. Yeah, that's very...
Oliver Queen, everybody.
Thank you for coming. What a stand-up guy.
But then, I mean, you move on to like season 2, and then he starts to improve, and then you get to see a lot of Felicity, but... Yeah. Then Felicity starts to go a little dark because of all the different traumatic things that happens throughout the season.
Right, no, that's very, very true. I mean, it's so interesting how these characters change both in shows and in comic books as well. And I mean, there is one bright character that, for the most part, is pretty bright, and that's the Flash, right? And we see that in comics. Yes. He's mostly the comic relief. He's like basically the arrogant kid who's like, I'm the fastest guy on the planet. Like, try and catch me. Tries to race Superman all the time, even though Superman wins. Spoiler alert, he wins. League. Yep. But no, he also has some dark things like with the Flashpoint paradox. You know, when he goes back in time and all of a sudden everything's destroyed. All of a sudden Bruce Wayne's dead and his father Thomas is Batman. His mom's the Joker. I mean, freak. I mean, 'cause again, so you see the spectrum of light and dark with these different characters. Alright, so the next part of this discussion is, of course, movies and I guess entertainment in general, less than just TV shows. And, of course, we have to mention Marvel, because the MCU is by far one of the most, I guess, profitable cinematic universes of all time. And so I guess we'll start off with you, Whitney. What are some things that Marvel movies do a really good job of?
I think the biggest thing that Marvel does well is a character build. I mean, we have the Iron Man, Captain America, all these different movies, Thor, as opposed to just kind of throwing them all together and making a movie. We know about them, we fall in love with them basically, and then they throw them all together, and we get to attempt to see how they work out, even though we kind of know how their attitudes are and how they're going to clash.
Right.
And just makes it really fun.
That was my first thought too, was the character build. Even like Endgame, where we see Professor Hulk and the backstory of Ant-Man and Hawkeye and everybody else. Because you have that 5-year gap of just like what the heck happened.
Yeah.
And then it fast forwards, and each person has about like 2 minutes to explain what's going on. The Hulk scene is a great example of that, when they're having lunch with Professor Hulk.
Yeah.
He gives a very short explanation of what was going on, just kind of voila.
Granted, we would have liked to see kind of a scene of
that's exactly it. Like in my opinion, the only way that movie could have been better was of seeing the backstories of particularly Hulk and Hawkeye and what he went through in those 5 years. Obviously, he took a dark past.
Yeah.
Right.
And maybe a little bit of Thor to see how he slowly fell apart. And I guess
Fat Thor.
Cue the picture of Fat Thor.
Fat Thor.
But I think that would have been really cool to see. And I guess the nice thing is with the Endgame is they made him more relatable. Like he isn't just this god. He also had these issues like depression and different things.
Jane dumped me.
Jane dumped me. And
my old flame. And
my mother died.
Is he asleep? No, I'm pretty sure he's dead. No, I totally agree that they do a really good job of developing these characters. I think another thing that Marvel movies do a really good job of is they can throw in changes to these characters without you really caring about that change. You like what they did with it. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, Ultron, legendary villain of the Marvel Universe, especially in comics. And in the comics, he's created by Hank Pym, who's the original Ant-Man. Of course, Hank Pym in the MCU is older, and he's not Ant-Man anymore. But of course, in the MCU, Ultron's created by Iron Man, which in most other situations would upset a lot of fans, but they did it in such a way towards the only way it could have happened, and it satisfies fans, which I think is really, really hard to do, especially with a preconceived notion of characters with comic book fans.
I definitely agree. I know, for me, I'm one of those people that if the movie doesn't follow the book, I get really ticked off. And so, but like you said, they did like such a good job with it, and I really just think they really kept us on our toes. I mean, when we were at the movie theater watching Endgame, and they were in, oh my gosh,
Vormir. Yep.
Vormir, that's what it is. Ben was absolutely convinced that Hawkeye was going to sacrifice himself.
100%.
And it's just good over there, and I was just starting to cry. I'm like, it's not Hawkeye. It's not going to be Hawkeye.
And then at dawn, I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. It's not going to be.
And so there's just different surprises that they threw at us throughout the movie.
No, very, very true. And now next we're going to talk about DC movies. And now this is where more I kind of come into this, because I'm a huge DC movies fan to a certain extent. There are some movies out there from the DC universe that don't measure up. I'm talking about Justice League and Joss Whedon. Yeah. Anyway, but one thing that I really like about DC movies is that while Marvel does a good job of handling changes to characters, DC does a really good job of doing a lot of comic book fan service. Like, there's a lot of scenes and small things they add in the movies, and I'm thinking mostly of Batman v Superman, which I know was homework for you guys, but you guys failed to do it.
Yes, we did.
But I love that movie because they have these small things that you wouldn't really care about unless you read the comics that it was based on, which, for example, I mean, you see scenes like, there's a scene in Batman v Superman where Batman infiltrates a warehouse and he beats up all these thugs, and this one guy's pointing a flamethrower at Martha Kent, and he says, believe me, I'll do it, I'll kill her. And Batman says, I believe you, and shoots his little flamethrower pack, and he explodes. That's almost completely ripped out of the Dark Knight Returns comic book, and I think that's one thing that DC can lean on more in the future. I mean, of course, because DC hasn't had the cinematic success that Marvel has, because that's really hard to replicate, and they tried to catch up too much.
Mm-hmm. I would agree, and it's like the fact too how, in Batman vs Superman, Batman kills a lot, and that's as we know from Christopher Nolan's and Christian Bale's Batman, that's his one rule, as he tells Joker, I have one rule, and
even though Christian Bale's Batman killed 37 people.
Yes, he did in all 3 movies, but it's like, it's not. I mean, most of them is not just like fighting and boom,
Right.
you're dead, breaking necks, like, or whatever, like Ben Affleck's Batman tended to do.
Yeah, that's fair.
And as well, like, you know, in Batman vs Superman, it's that dark side of Batman that we really see how he's much more craving to be Batman versus Christian Bale's Batman. He was more craving to find like a medium or even just be
Bruce
Wayne.
And make it so that Gotham City did not need Bruce Wayne. And I think also one thing that DC movies do a really good job of is they really want to make the audience think for themselves. And again, no disrespect to Marvel movies, but a lot of things just kind of put out plainly for you. And it's just kind of like, here it is, it's entertaining, it's fun. But DC movies, you kind of have to fill in the gaps by yourself, which makes it fun as a comic book fan, but I can understand why those who aren't into comic books watching the movies would be confused or kind of frustrated, because like they're like, all these plot holes everywhere, this thing wasn't fleshed out. It's like, not really. They wouldn't understand. You won't understand, people. And so yeah, I think overall it pretty much sums up DC. Again, they just try to catch up too much.
And then Justice League is a great example of that. Justice League came out right around the, you know, it was like Avengers, Civil War, and
Close to
Infinity War, and when those were becoming big. Somewhere between Infinity War and Civil War is when Justice League came out, and it, you know, I mean, of course, we already knew about Ben Affleck as Batman.
Right.
Henry Cavill as Superman, we already knew. But then they tried to throw in the Flash, a totally different character. It wasn't Grant Gustin from the Flash, from the TV show. It was a totally different Flash with a somewhat different of a backstory. And of course, Wonder Woman was there, which we kind of knew about.
I can agree. It's just frustrating. As a DC fan, I would just love for these DC movies to take off more than they have, but they just haven't. It's okay. I'll be fine. It's fine. And again, with TV shows as well, I mean, you have Marvel and DC TV shows that you've seen, especially on Netflix. We've seen a lot of Marvel. Of course, we have, I mean, Luke Cage, you have Daredevil, you have Iron Fist, Jessica Jones,
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Agents of
You
S.H.I.E.L.D.
cannot forget Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Absolutely. Very, very true.
Coulson.
Yes.
Coulson.
And
Restore and Coulson.
Yes.
And I mean, these shows all do really good, and also Punisher. Can't forget about Punisher either. I think these shows go to a place where the Marvel movies can't, like as far as like action is concerned and other like more adult things is concerned, which would be a perfect approach for some DC characters. If I'm being quite honest. I mean, especially like Batman, Green Arrow, Deathstroke. You can have those kind of shows like Marvel has on Netflix with these DC characters. But as far as DC shows is concerned, at least nowadays, it's more like kind of lighter. You know, like the Crisis on Infinite Earth or like the Flash and things like that. It's almost kind of flipped with TV shows, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
No, I would agree. But DC does do a good job at implementing those characters. You see in Arrow, you have Deathstroke plays a big role, especially in the early seasons, and a couple times just throughout when Oliver needs Slade to come in, do an errand for him or whatever else. Or rescuing his son was another big plot of one of the other seasons. And there's even references to, like, one of my favorites was the reference to Batman.
Yes.
In the Arrow. I believe even before Batwoman was a thing. I was, you know, that's coming. That's just released actually.
Yeah.
I believe last week or 2 weeks ago. They were joking with Felicity about, you know, how she got the name Overwatch. And someone mentioned the name Oracle, and Oliver was like, "Yeah, we liked it, but that was already taken." Which we know in the comics, that's what Batman called Barbara Gordon.
Right.
Because that was kind of his Felicity, so to speak, his Overwatch type of person, keeping an eye on him while he's out doing his thing.
I do also like how in the DC shows they did start to mix together. So like in order to watch this, I guess, like section of it, you had to go and watch this part of Supergirl and then like go to Flash and just kind of like hop around because they would all eventually come together. Yes, exactly. Which we know Marvel does a ton. It sucks you in and you have to, understand and watch everything to be able to understand the next movie. And so that's what DC has kind of done, and I've sometimes liked how they done it. Sometimes I'm just like, oh, because then I have to like flip through and like figure out where it's at. I thought they did a fantastic job with Flash and Arrow, though. I won't lie, and I'm sure you guys probably haven't watched a ton, but I struggle with Supergirl. I don't know what their plan was with Supergirl.
I tried.
I was hesitant.
I really tried.
I'm still like very hesitant to watch it. Like, I mean, not just because of like Supergirl, but like just seeing how it looks and how it just appears in like trailers and stuff. It's just like, I don't know. Like, I don't. Anyway, that's why I was very hesitant. I just right from the start, I was like, do we need that?
Yeah.
But
I mean, I've watched her, and I mean, her character's okay when she's like with the other characters that we've enjoyed, but I've also tried to watch her own show, and I got into like 4 episodes maybe, and I was like, I just can't.
yeah, that's fair.
Well, I think that's another thing worth mentioning too. I think with that is you mentioned Crisis on Infinite Earths as well, and how not just Supergirl, who we've seen repeats of, but Superman's going to play a big role.
Multiple versions.
Versions of Superman. Brandon Roth, we know, has been Superman in the past for movies.
Suit looks amazing in the promos, by the way.
It's true, but he's also a character in the Arrowverse as well, and especially in DC Legends.
Right.
But he's gonna be reprising his role as both characters, as Superman, and as his character in the show. Then, as on top of that, Tom Welling, who played Superman in a different show.
I believe Smallville. Yes.
Smallville.
Yeah.
So I was right. So Smallville is going to be reprising his role.
Yeah.
Amazingly enough, probably with help of Stephen Amell, who was in Smallville with Tom Welling. So you're gonna have 3 different versions of Superman in the same show, played by 3 actors who have done a great job at playing. Because of course you have the third being the Superman who's in a couple spots in Supergirl.
Right. Very true. And then you also have Kevin Conroy coming back as like an older Batman, which could be really cool or really weird.
Gonna be a bust.
You think so?
Maybe it's the Batman's a hard role to play. I think Christian Bale and Ben Affleck doing great jobs on their own. I mean, those are just ones in recent years. But you go back to Michael Keaton and all of them. Each role has been played differently with a different style of Batman, with a little bit different of a pass. I'm curious what they're gonna throw, because Batwoman, the show, is supposed to be pretty dark.
Right.
It's supposed to be, I think, one of probably the darkest DC shows out there. So I'm curious how they're gonna play Batman, and or if he's just gonna be Bruce Wayne,
not like retired Batman.
Yeah, not explicitly Batman, or what they're gonna do.
All right, and the last thing we're gonna talk about is Marvel video games compared to DC video games, and the first thing that comes to mind when we think of superhero video games is Arkham. Right, the Arkham series. I just started playing through Arkham Origins for the first time, courteous of this guy. And let's just say I was up absurdly late last night playing it. But DC video games, at least recently, specifically Batman video games,
The Batman ones
are just so dang awesome, so well made, and I don't even know what else to say with it. You just feel like Batman in those games. So they do a really good job of making you feel like the character in the game and having such great storylines with it. Whereas, of course, you have Marvel has kind of some catching up to do as far as video games is concerned. They have their Avengers Assemble video game coming out
next year sometime.
Right, which could be awesome, but they also have a lot to live up to as far as Arkham is concerned.
I would agree, but you can't forget about Marvel's Ultimate Alliance games that are out there.
This is true.
Because those have been around for ages. I mean, since early, PlayStation, or early Xbox days, and those games are
I'm not
amazing.
gonna lie, I totally forgot about it until you just mentioned it. I don't know how good those games are. Like, holy crap!
It's one of those games that they're always kind of slid under the rug. They kind of get lost in the back of the cabinet in your games. But it's one of those you pull out and you're like, oh my gosh, like this was.
Why did I stop playing
this? This was a gem.
It's like Spyro from PlayStation 1. Like,
Yeah.
why did I ever stop?
Don't get Whitney going on Spyro. That's a whole different podcast for us.
Yes, it is. I can go on and on about Spyro.
Well, like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, these games, like Marvel's, that game, Ultimate Alliance, it's just such a good game that gets forgotten. I mean, it's evident that I just totally forgot about it until now. But, again, you've seen Marvel have success with games in the past, and you're starting to see a lot of, we've seen a lot of Marvel Lego games, which are also really fun. Like, Lego Marvel's Avengers was absolutely fantastic. I've played that a lot. And you also have the DC Lego games, which if I'm honestly speaking, I do prefer the Marvel Lego games rather than the DC Lego games, because I feel like, I don't know, they handle the Lego aspect of it so much better in my opinion, whereas DC Lego games, like the Lego Batman movie, or not Lego Batman movie, that's fantastic, but the Lego Batman video game, for example, was extremely campy. like ridiculously campy, like almost to the point where it's a mixture of Adam West and a really ridiculous version of Michael Keaton, to where like everything's like really weird, really abstract, and which has its place, granted, but I didn't like it. I really didn't like it at all, which is hard for me to say because like
Batman.
yeah, Batman is like my fanhood, as you can tell. Then of course Peyton Manning, right?
Peyton Manning, can't forget about Peyton Manning.
She's a Patriots fan, which makes sense because she's also a Captain America fan, so I guess I can't hold that against her.
Born and raised.
But like it's true, and that's the thing with the Lego games. You have to understand that they're all kind of hit and miss.
That's true.
Each game has its own iffy parts and parts that are good. Even back to Lego Star Wars, the very first one, there was the parts where it was like, okay, that's kind of
the god of Lego games.
It's true. The original Lego Star Wars is the best. Will always go down to be the best. Like Lego Harry Potter was very.
I never even attempted.
I
never
just did
felt
Lego Avengers, yeah.
I never felt Lego and Harry Potter could ever work together.
Yeah, it was just very odd gameplay. At least the parts that I played. Avengers had its parts. The parts that I played more of that, but there were parts where I was like, okay, this is kind of different. I don't really like it compared to, and so I think that's how the Lego games are, because they have to make them a certain way to accommodate with Lego.
Yeah. Alright, so Ben, Whitney, thank you guys so much for being on today. It was a great discussion about Marvel and DC. Make sure to leave your guys' opinions down in the comments down below. What favor, Marvel, DC, in which, I guess, genre? Yeah, she's obviously got her vote in, but definitely let us know down in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks.